What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Sports Nerds podcast here on the 515 Podcast Network. I'm Brock Bierman, alongside with my boy, as always, Dawson Livingston, back with another division preview for the NFL season. This time we're looking at the NFC West, which is home to one of the two competitors in last year's Super Bowl, the San Francisco 49ers, led by Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, and others. So there's going to be a lot to talk about on if they're going to be making a comeback, as well as, other teams who potentially may be making some noise. I don't think this division is actually that terrible, but at the same time, I do think that the number one option and the number one pick for a lot of people kind of stands out more than anything.
Right. All the other teams in the division outside of San Francisco have reasons to be excited for the season. Like the Rams, Stafford's gonna be back 100% healthy. They got year two of Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. We'll see what they can do with that. Um, Obviously it sucks with the Rams. They lost Aaron Donald in the offseason, which we'll get into. Seattle's got optimism. They added some guys on defense, beefed up that offensive line, which is only going to help. And then Arizona got arguably the best player in the draft. You could take position value out of it. I think Marvin Harrison would have went number one in any other draft for teams that didn't need a quarterback. So I think every team in this division has something to be rooting for this season.
Yeah, and let's not waste any time and let's get into previewing this season. And let me fix the graphics real quick. We got the San Francisco 49ers, who were in the Super Bowl last year. My pick to win the Super Bowl heading into last season, and my pick to win the Super Bowl once we got to the playoffs. They ended up playing the team I knew they were going to play in the Kansas City Chiefs, and they fell short in overtime because I think they forgot the overtime rules have changed in the postseason. I think that was a big reason. Not that that was the only reason. Chris Jones was probably the main reason of why they didn't win the Super Bowl. But anyways, 12-5 last season, 5-1 versus divisional opponents, 5-3 at home, and 7-2 on the road. And you look at their schedule, the first, 4 or 5 weeks, I think they're going to be back in the situation of being at the top of the NFC.
This opens up week one. They have the Jets, which is going to be a tough game with Rodgers, obviously. To be able to win at home, I'm going to help them out. Vikings, their season's looking rough after losing McCarthy, so we'll see with that game. Any division games, so like week 3 against the Rams and week 6 against the Seattle Seahawks, are always going to be closer. Especially the Rams. The Rams were in the playoffs last year and were close to beating the Lions in Detroit. So that'll be a good game to watch in week 3. Week 4, like you said, we'll get to that team later on in the next few weeks, but that team's probably going to be the worst team in the league. Week 5, another divisional game against the Cardinals. We'll see. That'll be Marvin Harrison's first action against San Francisco. Should be fun. The game I have circled on, I'm sure you do too, is that Week 7 game. Yep. That Week 7 game against Kansas City is probably going to be the game of the year, if I had to guess, or close to. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm fairly confident that's going to be on everyone's watch list that week.
Oh, yeah. I have that. There's a couple of 49er games specifically that I have circled on my must-watch this season. That one versus Kansas City in Week 7 being one of them. It's a coincidence that actually all of these are home games for the 49ers. The following week versus the Cowboys, because the 49ers versus Dallas is always a big rivalry. And then, you got week 17 at home versus Detroit is going to be a good one as well, because you got to remember, Detroit had a good lead against them in the playoffs and a chance to go to the Super Bowl, but San Francisco was able to come back and win that one. But I don't think, as we are recording here on a Wednesday, August 21st, no news has come out about Brandon Ayuk's situation with his contract. And I've mentioned this numerous times on this podcast. I've had Iowa State fans actually come after me. I've had Iowa fans come after me about this take. But I think that Brandon Ayuk is Brock Purdy's number one weapon in terms of who he likes to throw to the most. That is just what I've seen when I watch Brock Purdy play. Of course, is Brandon Ayuk the best receiver or the best pass catcher for the San Francisco 49ers? No, I still would probably put Debo and George Kittle over him. But when the 49ers have Brandon Ayuk and he is rolling, this team is really, really hard to beat. And you just add Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, and this team is just filled on the offensive side. And I feel like if they lose Ayuk, I don't think they would fall, but I think that they would go through a slump where they just aren't rolling as much as you would probably expect that they would do on the offensive side.
Right, if they somehow get this Ayuk situation figured out, I think it's really going to be helpful for Purdy, for the whole Niners organization. Because I would say this is probably their last year with this, or maybe next year's their last year with this core nucleus that they have on offense.
Contract.
Right, it's real nice to have Purdy on a contract when he's only making $800 to $900 a year. But once you got to pay, obviously you're already paying CMC, you're already paying Debo. Ayuk's contract won't kick in this year, but it'll kick in next year, and Purdy's contract will kick in next year. Trent Williams is getting up there in age. George Kittle is probably going to still be very productive, but you're still paying him $15+ million a year. So it's a win now for San Francisco. They're all their chips are in the middle of the table. They have to win, or at least get back with either this year or next year. And I feel pretty confident that they are going to be back.
And I mean, I feel like this franchise and organization realized that they are in a win now situation with their roster when they made that move for Christian McCaffrey a few years ago. And since then, they have been the number one team, I feel like, consistently on the NFC side. I mean, of course, the Eagles made the Super Bowl 2 years ago, but still, I still would say that the 49ers has been the number one team for a lot of people in their opinions when looking at the NFC side of the NFL. But yeah, Brock Purdy's not getting paid a lot right now. I think he's going to get a contract from San Francisco. I feel like they would be stupid not to give him a contract. And he will be like we talked about in other previews episodes that we've had. He won't be the number one paid quarterback, but he will set a standard for a quarterback that's not elite, but makes good enough plays, amazing plays to help a team win.
Yeah, I think him and Dak are kind of in that same tier where it's like both of those guys are going to break the bank next offseason, where they're both going to command top dollar. I do think that either one of them is probably going to be the highest paid quarterback in the league. More so probably Dak than Purdy at this moment. But I think once that day comes where they have to pay that contract to Purdy, that's when San Francisco is going to start losing some of their firepower. They're going to have to start make some trades.
That's when their days of like contending will start counting down instead of counting up.
Right, because it's like I said, it's nice to pay a quarterback the veteran minimum basically, and you're able to have that insane defense with Fred Warner and Nick Bosa, and then that offense with Trent Williams, Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, and even Kyle Juszczyk, who we don't really talk about that often. Like that team has arguably 6 or 7 of the best guys in the league at their position, or have been at one point in their career. And once you pay Purdy, you start to lose a guy here and there because you got to make room for the quarterbacks. Quarterbacks are the most important position on the team, and rightfully so. They should be the highest paid position on the team.
Are they pound for pound the most talented roster in the NFL?
I think so, because especially when you look at their offense. Like, I know we've already said it a couple times, but their offense is loaded. Their defense is very good too. They got Javarius Ward in the secondary. Obviously, Fred Warner.
I think they underperformed last year.
Right, they didn't play up to their peak like they did 2 years ago, or even the year that they had Jimmy G under center when they went to the Super Bowl. That defense was insane. That was rookie year Nick Bosa, and they had guys like D Ford, and who, as a Chiefs fan, that play still haunts me to this day. But that's besides the point. But no, I think this defense is only going to step up this year. Always the big question though with San Francisco every year, no matter what, is injuries.
Yep.
This team has been the most injury-plagued team within the last 5 or 6 years, because they'll have years where they'll make the Super Bowl and then look unbeatable. But that's next year they'll be like, oh, so and so's out for the year. Oh, so and so's out for the year. Oh, someone's struggling with injuries. So if they're able to like limit the injuries and how much they're banged up at the start of the year, it's only going to help them come to playoffs and potentially the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I'm not someone for like if you're up big to like bench your players because you don't want to like waste reps or whatever. Like you want to give them as many reps as possible to feel good as you get the back half of the season. But if you're going up against Arizona, New England, Minnesota, if another game, maybe Seattle, you're up by like 2-3 scores in the fourth quarter, and you know the momentum's completely on your side. I don't allow Debo to carry the ball as much as you probably would, or Christian McCaffrey. I can't remember who their backup running back is. Um,
It's
shoot,
it's not Elijah Mitchell, is it?
and he's another guy that's dealt with injuries. Let me look real quick.
I think they might have a rookie as their RB2 this year.
Okay, let's look
At
here.
least that's what I thought I saw in
Elijah
training
Mitchell
camps.
was one of them. Yeah, they drafted Isaac Gurendo.
Maybe
Guren.
that's not. I don't know if that's if I'm thinking of the right guy.
And then they also have Jordan Mason as well. I don't know if they've
That's what I'm
added
thinking of.
if they've added anybody, but like right now, looking at their depth chart, right now, Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, and Jordan Mason are all questionable. So already, like
Yeah.
injuries are kind of not. It's not time to like worry or anything, but they are adding up a little bit. And so if you're in the fourth quarter and you're able to pump the brakes or like let your foot off the gas, I know a lot of people don't believe in letting the foot off the gas, just don't allow a team to come back in. But I feel like this team and this roster is built to where they can and not necessarily have to feed Christian McCaffrey 20, 30 times a game or give Debo 15 touches. And so the more that they can do that, the better their season's going to be, just because you don't want week 17 to happen and all of a sudden, McCaffrey's leading the league in carries and something happens and then he's out for the playoffs, because then you're screwed. Because if they lose McCaffrey, I think McCaffrey's their X factor in terms of talent, being able to pull a team through. But Brandon Ayuk is also a key piece of this roster.
Right. Every guy on that offense is extremely vital to their success. The one piece that I'm really curious about is how San Francisco's O line is going to be able to do this year, especially with Trent Williams holding out. Like Trent Williams has been the best left tackle in football, or arguably the best left tackle in football since he stepped into the league, 12, 13 years ago. And for him just to not be on that offensive line is only going to hurt not only the rest of the O line, but Purdy, all the other guys in that offense. So I'm curious to see how they're going to perform, or if Trent Williams even gets back. But looking at their offseason, they didn't really make a whole lot of moves, but they also didn't like lose that many like important players. They lost Chase Young to New Orleans. He signed over there. Sam Darnold obviously went to Minnesota. They lost Randy Gregory, but I don't remember where Randy Gregory ended up signing. But some of their additions, they added a good backup quarterback in Josh Dobbs, who was looking good for Arizona and Minnesota last year. They added a guy like Leonard Floyd, who's only going to help the pass rush that much more. And they added Ricky Pearsall, the rookie wide receiver out of Florida, who, again, just another weapon that you can throw against other teams, that Kyle Shanahan's going to find a way to scheme open, because that man, he was making Chris Conley wide open in the Super Bowl. And for those of you who don't know Chris Conley was on the Chiefs maybe 6-7 years ago, and that dude, no disrespect, is still being wide open. Like when he caught that ball on the sideline, I was like, there's no way this man is still on the team right now. But
yeah, I still have a lot of confidence in this team. I mean, a lot of people were talking about how they are like the runaway favorite of, last year's Super Bowl around November, and then they dropped a huge game against the Ravens. I remember that vividly. Like for like 2 weeks straight, it was, nope, nobody's beating the 49ers. And then they got embarrassed against Baltimore. And so there's going to be situations where they have that, where they get the hype, and it'll be the question of, can they actually get over the hump of delivering, or get over the hump of, can they perform when it matters most, when the hype is on them, because they are a team that's going to get the hype. I mentioned how Philadelphia plays well when they're the underdogs in a lot of sports. San Francisco is a team that is a top dog most of the time, so they need to be able to perform when people are talking about them as a top dog.
Right, and San Francisco is tied for the biggest favorite to win the Super Bowl, or is this to win? Yeah, to win the Super Bowl this upcoming year. Vegas really seems to think that we're going to get a rematch of last year.
And I mean, last year was fun. I'd take that in a heartbeat. I have the 49ers going around 13 wins, 13-4. Worst case scenario, 11-10 wins, 10-11 wins. I don't see them having a terrible season like that. Not that 10 wins is terrible. I shouldn't be able to say that 10 wins is terrible as a Cardinals fan, but 13-4, I think that's where they'll finish the season.
I would say their floor is about 10-7. Yeah, 10. I'll say 10-7, and then their ceiling, I probably 13-4, 12-5. It's just tough though, because with this Ayuk situation, we don't know if he's getting a contract or we don't know if he's getting traded, and so that really kind of limits how much I want to invest in them going 13-4.
Yep. I still think that they'll win double digits no matter what.
Right, I think so too, but I think Brandon Ayuk is definitely the difference between 11-6 and 13-4.
Difference between a bye and a wild card spot.
Right, going on the road in your first playoff game or potentially having home field throughout the NFC. So I'll stick with their floor at 13-4, but man, it's tough to really gauge that far in the future without knowing for certainty what's going on with Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, I completely agree. Another team that I think may have been not looking at as a potential team that could have a successful season, the Rams, who I think they were 10-7 last year, which actually shocked me when I was looking back at this, because I thought they were a little worse than that. And they, it shocked me. It really did. I thought that they were performing really bad last season. I thought Stafford was an issue. I mean, he wasn't healthy pretty much most of the season. Cooper Kupp, I think, was out for a good chunk of the season. But Puka Nacua, I think Nacua is how you pronounce his last name, right?
Yep.
That dude just balled out, man. That guy was unbelievable last season. Did you know that he played on a youth football team that was coached by Dana White?
No, I did not know that. That's kind of
cool, my gosh, you got to look up, like, Dana White, like, in the Vegas area had like a youth football team that he coached or was like a manager he was a part of or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's like 3 or 4 NFL guys on there that Dana White once coached at one point in his life, which is kind of funny to think about. But the Rams, I think, are going to actually have a decent season this year. If Stafford stays healthy, this offense is going to be really fun to watch. I think the addition of Blake Corum is going to be something that people don't realize how big of a deal it could end up being. I think he was the 83rd pick for the Rams this season. And then, we've mentioned it. The loss of Aaron Donald is going to be huge. And there's going to be games where his presence not being there is going to show, because he is one of the guys on defense where he's going to get his stats, but at the same time, the plays that he doesn't get a stat, he's still impacting the game drastically, whether it's hurrying up the quarterback to make a quick move or, just pressuring the offensive line. And so he's a huge loss, but I do think that this defense is going to be able to hold up, and we'll see what the Rams do. What are your thoughts? I do think that they have a little bit of a tougher start compared to the 49ers, going to Detroit, at Arizona. I don't know if Arizona is necessarily a huge threat, but, it's a divisional game. And then you got the 49ers at home and then at Chicago, which we've mentioned. We think that Chicago could potentially be a fun team and a very good team by the end of the season.
Yeah, I think the loss of Aaron Donald is going to be huge, honestly. Like, So we talk about Chris Jones, how he potentially could have won Super Bowl MVP last year. Aaron Donald should have won Super Bowl MVP the year they played the
Yep.
Bengals. I will die on that hill. All you have to watch is that last play the Bengals had on offense, where he's able to get through the offensive line. I think two guys are blocking him, and he's able to throw Joe Burrow to the ground because Jamar Chase was wide open running down the sideline, which would have been the game-winning touchdown or game-winning touchdown for the Bengals, excuse me. So I think the loss of him is going to be huge, but I still like the Rams a lot. Honestly, they had some good players last year that stepped up. Kyron Williams was not only just a great fantasy back for my fantasy team, but just was a great running back in general. Had over 1,100 yards, 12 touchdowns, and obviously we know Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua was tremendous last year for the Rams.
I hope he doesn't have a sophomore year slump because he is so fun to watch.
He is, and he's such a likable receiver in the NFL. Like he just has a great personality, which is always makes it more willing to like cheer for and stuff like that. But obviously, Puka Nacua had a great year. He had 1,400 yards. He had 6 touchdowns. And who knows if Cooper Kupp comes back healthy this year, dude? They got 2 like legit number 1 receivers on the outside. That a lot of teams,
guys are going to hate that though because you got to pick one or the other.
Right, but if you're a Rams fan, just in general, either one of those guys can go off for 150, 200 yards in any given game. Maybe more so Puka right now, and at his point in his career, more so than Kupp. Kupp is, I think, in his 8th year in the league already, which is crazy to say.
My mind.
But I really like what the Rams are doing. Let me pull up their offseason. Yeah, obviously losing Aaron Donald is rough, but they were to add guys like 49er legend Jimmy Garoppolo. Kidding.
Shut up.
Kidding.
And that's it for this episode.
No, in all seriousness, they were able to get a guy in the first round in Jared Verse, who's only going to help that pass rush even more. They were able to add cornerback Tre'Davious White from the Bills, and another cornerback who used to play for them, funny enough, and Darius Williams from Jacksonville. They also were able to get another defensive tackle in the draft, and Braden Fisk, who obviously will not amount to Aaron Donald. I feel confident pretty much saying that right now. But I think it's going to help. That Rams defense is really young and really aggressive. So I really like what they're doing. And obviously when you still have Sean McVay, you still have Matt Stafford, and you still have like those two together, you're going to be pretty solid.
Yeah, I agree. I have their ceiling. This might be a little too nice. I could see a situation where they go 10-7 again, but I also see a situation where they go 11-6. And then I have their floor around 9-8. This is just because I think talent-wise on the offensive side will outweigh the rest of the rosters in the NFC West when it comes to the Seahawks and Cardinals. 49ers is a different story, obviously, but I think that this team will have a good season. I think that they will be in the playoffs, and if they stay healthy, they could make some noise.
Right, I would have their ceiling right around the same mark at 11-6. I would have the floor though a little bit lower at 8-9, just because the uncertainty with health with this team, with Cooper Kupp not being like, who knows if he's 100% healthy, and same with Stafford. I think Stafford struggled with injuries last year, missed 2 games. I think if Stafford and Kupp are able to stay healthy, I think 11 wins is easily within reach for them.
Mm-hmm.
But if both of them miss time, they could be dropping games that they really shouldn't be dropping.
Yeah. And they will be battling, I think, for second place in this division, because I think we both agree that the 49ers are probably going to run away with this one. And they will probably be competing with another team that I feel like, I don't know if they're rebuilding. I don't know if they're buying. I think they're kind of stuck. And I'm talking about the Seattle Seahawks, 9-8 last year. I think they went 2-4 in the division, 5-3 at home. And this roster doesn't necessarily impress me. I will say that you can't forget that this offense still has DK Metcalf as well as Noah Fant. And I've watched a couple highlights when I was previewing this team, and those two have had huge impacts on this offense depending on the situation and who they are playing. But at the same time, Pete Carroll, I think he transitioned into a front office role. I don't know if he actually is on the front office. I've seen stuff I've also seen stuff that he may have went back to USC to be like a professor of some. I don't. Either way, he's not a head coach anymore. The head coach they brought in was Mike McDonald. Ravens defensive coordinator. Last 2 seasons, I think they were the top 3. They were in the top 3 for scoring defenses. So that's a good addition for a team that may be looking for a defense. At the same time, Geno, I don't know if he's the answer. I think we mentioned last episode that Sam Howell was traded to Seattle. Also led the league in interceptions last year. As well as, this roster, I just feel like is kind of in a weird situation where they're not competing for a huge playoff run or a Super Bowl appearance. But at the same time, it's not bad enough to where I think that they're rebuilding by any means.
Sorry, internet was going out.
You're good.
Out. So, I like what Seattle did in the offseason.
You really did? Okay.
But there's some additions that they made on defense that I like. I'll just say that because I think the defense is the weak point of the team. You said it earlier. Like if you have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Noah Fant, even Kenneth Walker, who was an absolute monster from last year, I think you're only going to be put up for success. They brought in Sam Howell, so we'll see if there's a quarterback battle. I think it's still going to be Geno, but I think Sam Howell at least there's a battle out there. But some of their defensive additions, I don't know if you're able to talk about them or not, but they were able to add Jerome Baker from Miami, who's a good linebacker for him. Tyrell Dodson from Buffalo is going to be another good linebacker. They added Byron Murphy in the draft, who was arguably one of the better defensive tackles in this draft, which is going to help. They added Laken Tomlinson from the Jets, I believe. I was about to say 49ers. He used to play for the Niners, but not last year. And then another offensive lineman named Christian Hayes, who was one of the better guards in this previous draft. So, I don't know. I'm like you said, I still think they're in a stuck position. Like, I don't know what direction they're really going. I would have loved to see Michael Penix come here, just stay in the Northwest and sit behind Geno. But the Falcons had other plans.
I still don't get that. When we get to
for reasons we will never understand, because now they didn't even play Penix in the preseason, which makes no sense whatsoever.
Is he still hurt though?
I don't think he was. I thought he was healthy. I think they just refused to play. I could be wrong.
Maybe they don't want people to think that there's any kind of battle. I don't know. We'll get into that when we preview that division. Right. I actually do like that division. I think it's going to be fun to watch that one this year.
I do too, but man, I would have loved to see Penix with Seattle because I think not like a hometown kid, but like staying in the Northwest, you're obviously still going to have your Washington fans that are going to root for you. But I don't know how to feel about the Seattle team. I don't know if you talked about your floor ceiling, but
go ahead. I want to hear yours first.
I would say their floor is 7-10, just because I think this roster still has enough talent where they're going to find a way to win a lot of these games. And they still have games on their schedule, like against the Giants and, sorry, Brock, against the Cardinals. And
I will say, outlier to last year, usually Seattle and Arizona split their series.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, it seems to always be when the away team usually wins, and then the away team wins at the other place. Right. It's me and my buddy Max. We love that game, but we hate it because it's always close and competitive, and it's annoying because he's a Seahawks fan and I'm a Cardinals fan.
Right. The one Seahawks Cardinals game I can remember is like the one that goes into overtime, and the kickers just kept missing field goals in OT.
We don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, it was like Steven Hauschka, and I don't even remember the Cardinals kicker at the time. But I would say their ceiling, and this is like if Geno goes back to Geno of 2 years ago, because Geno 2 years ago, I think was a 4,000-yard passer. It was really good for Seattle. I could see 10-7.
See, you're nicer than I am about these Seahawks. I got them 9-8 as a ceiling, and basically repeating last season. And I feel like they're going to be competitive in a lot of these games. I think they'll be in a lot of one-score games. I actually do think this roster is built to at least be in those situations more than others. But I also see a situation where they're falling to 6-11 by the end of the year.
Right. They could
and that's
be looking for a quarterback in the draft next year.
and I think they're going to one way or another. Honestly, I don't think Gino's the answer. Maybe Sam is. I still wish they would have given a bigger chance to Drew Lock, personally, but that's more because I like Drew Lock's celebration. But no, I got their ceiling at 9-8 and their floor around 6-11. It's just the way it is, but I will say it's a better situation than the next team that we're going to be talking about, which
is it though? Is it?
See, I think the next. Okay, so of course we're talking about the Arizona Cardinals. I think the Cardinals have a bigger like a bigger gap between their ceiling and their floor this season, because I think that they could be a surprise to some people, and they could get some of these games that they probably shouldn't win, and they actually end up winning them. I mean, they were 4-13 last season, not ideal to say the least, and I'm trying to pull up their schedule here, but if I remember right, there was a situation where they could have started the season 3-0, and yeah, they lost 20-16 against Washington, so they blew that game. Blew a lead. I think it was a big lead against the Giants. 31-28 was the final score of that one.
Mm-hmm.
Beat Dallas 28-16, so they could have started 3-0 easily. Of course, lost to San Francisco the following week, 35-16, and then played the Bengals 34-20 loss as well. But they could have started the year 3-0. So you change two of those losses into wins, and all of a sudden they have 6 wins, 6-11, and it changes the outlook of what that season would have been as a whole.
But there's no Marv then.
That's a good.
No
that's why.
No
that's
Maserati
why
Marv.
No, that's why I'm saying, like, I'm happy the season went the way it did record-wise because they were able to get Marvin Harrison, who I think is going to be a huge steal, not a steal, a huge get, because they need that Larry Fitzgerald-esque impact wide receiver that they've been desperately looking for since Fitzgerald retired. Hopkins was good, but he got injured like outside of 1 or 2 seasons, and
right, his Hopkins' first year he was phenomenal, but outside of that, he had some injury-plagued seasons.
And so you look at other games that they played in, last season, 31-24 against the Ravens, lost that one. 21-16 against the Texans, lost that one. 21-20 against Seattle, lost that one. 27-16 at Chicago, lost that one. But also beat Philly 35-31. Beat Pittsburgh, beat Atlanta. I could see a situation where the Cardinals actually do surprise some people this season and make big strides and improve drastically record-wise. I mean, they didn't win a single divisional game. So they literally just need to win one this season, and they have already improved on the year from the previous season. Looking at their schedule, I like their chances against the Patriots. I think we've mentioned the Patriots are probably the worst team in the league. I could see them beating the Chargers and Seahawks at home. And then like 50-50 games. Rams at home, Washington at home, Bears at home. That's more of me feeling more confident about those teams than I do about Arizona, but I could see Arizona winning those games. And I also added at Seahawks, at Vikings, and at Panthers as 50-50 games because at Seattle, Arizona will beat Seattle once this year. Whether it's at Seattle or at home, we'll figure that out as we get to that point in the season. Maybe they pick up 2 games against Seattle, depending on how things turn out this season. And then you got at Minnesota and at Carolina. At Minnesota's kind of, I don't think they're selling on the season whatsoever, but they're not necessarily the Minnesota team that we may have expected heading into the year. And then the Panthers, you're high on the Panthers. I'm not for some reason. So I could see them winning that one. Games that I don't feel confident in for the Cardinals: at Bills, at home against the Lions, at 49ers, at Packers, at Dolphins, at home against the Jets, at the Rams, and at home versus the 49ers. So they honestly have a difficult schedule, kind of, when you look at it, at least where they have to go travel to. Their away games are kind of rough. But I feel confident Marvin Harrison's going to be a great addition. I think they may end up using Trey Benson, who they drafted with the 63rd pick. Sorry about that, but James Conner's getting up there in age, so I think that was why they made this move to get Benson. And I feel like he could be a great addition to this offense. And then I don't know. Long rant. As a whole, I feel very confident, actually, as a Cardinals fan going into the season, that they will not be in the top 5 in draft picks. And at the same time, I have also been proven wrong so many times about this Cardinals franchise. So I'll let you give your 2 cents on this team first, and then I'll give you my ceiling and floor.
Yeah, I'm going to start with their additions. Obviously, we talked about Marvin Harrison Jr., but we don't really need to talk about that one that much in depth. But they were able to add guys like Darius Robinson, the edge rusher from Missouri, who's probably going to play interior defensive line, which is going to help the Cardinals. They were able to add Jonah Williams from, I believe, the Bengals, offensive tackle, which is only going to help Kyler Murray and give him more time. They did, however, lose 2 wide receivers over the offseason, which is kind of rough for them, in Marquise Brown and in Rondale Moore, which, yeah, they're not the greatest receivers. They're kind of just gadget receivers, little speedy
one
receivers.
One of them hurts. I will say one of them hurts more than the other.
Right. But it hurts that overall depth in the wide receiver room. But they still added a lot of guys on defense, which I really like. They added Sean Murphy-Bunting, who was a part of that Tampa Bay defense, which wasn't great, but he was one of the few bright spots for them. And a trade that a lot of people forgot, they added quarterback Desmond Ridder from Atlanta, which Ridder has his flaws, but I think if we're looking at backup quarterbacks, he's not a terrible option. If some situation happened where Kyler had to miss some time, I think Ridder could step in there and really play some good ball.
I don't want to poo-poo on your Desmond Ridder.
No, let's hear it.
But all things that I read heading into this week are pointing towards
cut?
Pointing towards him getting cut.
Oh man!
So I
disregard everything about Desmond Ridder. In the short, this will not be. There will be no Desmond Ridder talk in the short that I make.
So we'll see. I don't know.
Who is their current backup then? Is it Clayton?
Let me look
real quick. Or whatever.
Because I haven't looked deeply on the roster, and you think I would because Cardinals fan, but it's just so Kyler, Desmond Ridder, yeah, Clayton Tune is still there.
Gotcha.
I mean, they're pointing towards him getting cut, but for some reason they only have 3 on their depth chart, so I don't know why they would cut him if they were.
They'll probably just move him to the practice squad, if I had to guess, or they move Tune to the part. No,
unless they're planning on signing someone else. I don't know. I mean, they've done that already. Yeah. They've jumped on a couple guys that have been cut by other teams in the past week and signed them to 1-year deals. So Arizona's kind of the team that may be open to doing that just because they don't necessarily have to be sold on someone.
Right, and that's what they did last year, too. They added Josh Dobbs from Cleveland. And Cleveland's got quarterbacks that they got a couple extra backup quarterbacks. They have Jameis, who arguably is one of the better backup quarterbacks in the league.
I think he should start, but yep.
Yeah. And then they also have, is it PJ Walker? PJ Walker's
yeah.
He's not a terrible option for a lot of teams, especially as a quarterback too. Yeah. I keep bringing it up, but my Kansas City Chiefs have Carson Wentz, who knows if he's going to get starting reps again in the near future, but I think he's viable for a lot of teams.
Oh my gosh. No.
MVP, no. Almost MVP Carson Wentz, I should say.
Almost MVP Carson Wentz. But no, where do you have their ceiling for the Arizona Cardinals?
I would say their ceiling is about, man, I don't want to be too mean, 7-10.
Okay.
And that's like perfect scenario for me. That's like Marvin Harrison goes like 1,600 yards, wins Offensive Rookie of the Year, and challenges for Offensive Player of the Year. And Kyler has a kind of a resurgence to his 2021 season where the Cardinals started off, 8-0, 9-0. And we're looking like one of the better teams in the league. Their floor, I think, is 4-13. And I know you don't want to hear that, but that's just like... Right. I just don't... There's not a huge amount of talent on this roster for me that really moves me. So
Yep.
I would say you have to kind of have that floor a little bit lower than you normally would. But
Yeah, I get that. My floor for them is 4-13 as well. That is in the situation where they only win one of those 50-50 games that I mentioned. I also do see a hypothetical situation where Marvin Harrison actually does go off as a receiver rookie year, and I could see them winning at home versus the Rams, at home versus Washington, at home versus the Bears, at Seattle, at Minnesota, and at Carolina. And if they do, I see them winning 9 games. I know that may be a lot for some people to think that Arizona would be able to do, but from the sounds of it, Kyler has been looking good at practice. And the fact that he had a full offseason to actually work with this new system that he's kind of been learning with the new head coach and new offense coordinator and everything, after his ACL tear from 2 years ago. I feel like this Cardinals team should feel very confident heading into the season. Are they going to be competing for the NFC West? No. Could they compete for the last wild card spot? Maybe, depending on how the rest of the NFL pans out. But I could see a situation where Arizona has a lot to be proud of once the offseason hits.
yeah, I was just really quick just going to look at odds for this whole division up to make the playoffs and just
Oh, I bet you Arizona's like bottom of the NFC. I'm not gonna lie. It's also me being an Arizona fan feeling confident heading into the season.
right. Let's see, Arizona Cardinals. So Vegas thinks the Arizona Cardinals are plus 300 to make the playoffs, which is honestly
That's actually better than I thought it would be.
right. It's higher than Tennessee, same as Minnesota. What else? Higher. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh boy, New England's plus 900, dude. I know they're gonna be bad, but holy moly! But
Dude, I can't wait to talk about that division. It's gonna be
that
interesting.
division, yeah, that division's just interesting, bro. Seattle's a plus 180. Obviously, San Francisco's pretty
Yeah,
heavy to make the playoffs. They're minus 525. Can't find the
I
Rams,
just think that
plus 100 for the Rams.
if we're going off of quarterbacks, I'd take Kyler over Geno or Sam Howell for who will be better, the Seahawks or the Cardinals. But at the same time, I got to remind myself that Kyler has been through an ACL tear. The Cardinals have only really had one good season, if you call starting 7-0 and finishing with a wild card exit at the Rams. The Rams ended up winning the Super Bowl, I think, that year, but it doesn't really matter. Anyways, I feel confident heading into the year. I have actually looked at Marvin Harrison Jr. Jerseys. Not gonna lie, I've yet to.
Are they on? Are they on the NFL shop yet?
I,
Did he not sign his Fanatics deal?
I'm gonna get one of them custom ones, dude. Or DHgate, you know.
I was gonna say I don't think you can do a custom one quite yet. I think people have been trying to do Harrison Jr. or Harrison and put number 18. It's just not working.
Just put J.R. Harrison as one word. J.R. Harrison.
Or classic DHK, like you said.
Yeah, DHgate. You know, I got my LA Dodgers Yasiel Puig jersey in the back in my closet. I break out in October when I watch baseball for 2 weeks, and then I turn it off and never watch baseball until next October.
Man, you got to hop in the baseball grind this year. Watch some Kansas City Royals.
If I'm watching baseball in October, I'm hoping it's I'm praying just because I have friends that are both Dodger and Royal fans. I'm hoping that it's Dodgers. Somehow the Royals just turn it up and like make the playoffs and go to the World Series.
I'm gonna be real. If the Royals somehow, some way, like made it to the ALCS, dude, I would find a way to go to one of those games.
That'd be fun.
And I'm not even a diehard baseball fan. I've been kind of getting into it this year.
Mm-hmm.
But dude, the Royals have been so bad the last 5 years. It's just not even funny. And they got a shot this year.
They have a shot, dude. Bobby Witt is legit, man. I love Bobby Witt. But yeah,
if it wasn't for Aaron Judge, dude, that Bobby Witt would be winning MVP this year.
I'm that type of guy though that like I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm a Dodgers fan, and they'll be like, oh, you're really a Dodgers fan, or are you a bandwagon? And then I show them that I have a Yasiel Puig jersey, and they automatically assume, oh, this guy's a diehard. And it's like, no. When I started watching baseball, Puig was a beast, and so I bought a jersey because I think he's cool, and I've just never gotten rid of it because Puig's my man.
Shout out to Yasiel Puig. Shout out.
Did he get in trouble for like gambling or something like that?
I don't know, dude, but he used to be a monster for the Dodgers and the Reds. Is what I remember.
Dude, Puig, when he would hit homers or other teams would hit homers in the playoffs, like he would be like absolutely lose his crap, man. He was one of the most electric players in a sport that like you need those, because there's some players that are just like boring. You hit a home run, you run around the bases, that's it. Puig hits home run, acts like he just won the World Series every time.
Yep.
And that's just how he was. I will say that he is also a person that like maybe traditional baseball fans didn't like, because he would ground out and not even run towards first base. He just runs to the dugout like, yep, that happened. It's not even worth it. But any final thoughts as we're switching back to the NFL here on the NFC West? I mean, we both have the 49ers winning it. Do you have anybody finishing above Los Angeles, or do you think the Rams are going to be number 2?
No, I think it's going to be, like you said, San Francisco. I think the Rams finish 2. Seattle's going to finish 3. And I think Arizona could vie for that 3rd spot if Seattle has a down year. And who knows? We're still 3 weeks away from kickoff of the NFL. I think 3 weeks from tomorrow.
Yep.
So a lot can happen from then. But for now, I think it's going to be Seattle 3rd and Arizona 4th.
Yep. And I'll take a barely under 500 4th place season for the Cardinals in the NFC West. As someone that's just desperately looking for a bright future for Arizona. I can't complain though, because I go from NFL cheering for the Cardinals, who usually suck, to the NBA cheering for Boston, who is defending champs. Just wanted to find a way to rub that in a little more. But
what, banner 18?
Oh yeah, we're just wait until banner 19, man. It's gonna be electric.
Dog.
Wait, what kind of shirt you got on?
Oh, it's a John Daly.
That's awesome.
Cigar.
That's awesome. I love that.
Shout out Friday Beers.
Shout out Friday Beers. Well, we will be back. So whenever this is posted, this is either posted on a Friday or a Sunday, probably Friday. But we'll be back the following week previewing some more NFC and AFC divisions. We're getting closer and closer to the season. I'm super excited. I think this is going to be a fun season of NFL football. But for Dawson Livingston, I'm Brock Bierman. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and now on TikTok at 515 Podcasts. We are live on Facebook and YouTube most of the time, so make sure to subscribe to YouTube as well. If you're wanting to listen to the podcast because you missed a recording or missed a live stream, you can find us on Spotify, SoundCloud, or Apple Podcasts. But for now, we'll see you all next week, and enjoy, some college football, because I'm assuming this is posted on a Friday. So enjoy some college football this weekend.